Joe. I'm not a politician, I'm not a business person, I'm not an attorney. I say that for two reasons. One, once a month the bishops of Arizona come together and have lunch together, and about a year ago, right before SB 1070 was passed, the bishops gathered, and that month we were sort of wringing our hands and saying, how can we affect the dialogue, the public dialogue on immigration, given our clear passions for moral choices that we believe should and ought to be made. And I was a bit of a loner at the table when I said, nobody's listening to us. And the only way that any of us are going to have an immediate impact on legislation that is about to be passed or will be soon crafted is to help our people understand the deep economic impact that such regressive legislation will have. Having said that, Glenn's presence here I think is critical. The chambers of commerce, many of us waited quite some time for them to weigh in on this, and have Glenn and the chambers represented shift the dialogue immensely. But I also say that to point out that when I talk about either putting solutions on the table or responding to solutions that others have put on the table, I don't speak out of the mindset of a politician, an attorney, or a business person, but out of a deep faith tradition that has had a lot to say about the nature of immigration for quite some time. Todd, I want to talk a little bit also about Ellis Island. On the Statue of Liberty is that beautiful poem by Emma Lazarus that many of us from our early childhood knew and fell in love with, that I think expresses the biblical imperative about immigration that is a deep part of my faith tradition and is a part of the faith traditions of most world religions. You will recall that she wrote, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Send these the tempest tossed to me. I lift beside the shore my golden lamp." I think to the politicians and to the attorneys, I would remind all of us that when crafting immigration legislation, if we begin with a hermeneutic of suspicion, if we begin with the principle that those who are coming across our borders are people to be feared, then the laws that we write alter dramatically the foundations upon which this country was built. The biblical imperative, reminds us that those who come into our lands as strangers and aliens are to be greeted as brothers and sisters. Theologically, when we think about that, we think about the creator of this land which we occupy and the creator of all human life, not distinguishing between border and race, and saying to all that this land is given to you as a gift, and you are all precious children in my sight. To begin to craft legislation that begins, as I say, with a hermeneutic of suspicion means that we think about the alien and the stranger in our land as people to be feared rather than brothers and sisters to be embraced. And I would ask that as we think about solutions, we allow that beautiful poem by Emma Lazarus, which inspired us, and which I think beautifully encapsulates that biblical imperative, to guide and redirect our efforts to find solutions. Now, Russ, I hear you clearly that 9/11 changed a lot of that for us. And one could argue that what 9/11 did was defend the rationale that we need to begin with a hermeneutic of suspicion. But we also need to understand that what that means is we sacrifice some of the foundational values upon which this country was built. And I would hazard and warn us not to walk too far down that street. Otherwise, we lose some of what the world saw intuitively when they spoke about what it meant to be America. The other thing that I'll say about Ellis Island, and why I think there's a significant difference between border realities when we talk about Ellis Island and border realities when we talk about Mexico, and this has to be a part of any solutions, proposals, or language that we put on the table, is America still has to deal with the phenomenon of white privilege. That our European ancestors are welcomed at Ellis Island, while our descendants of brown and black color, whether they came through in the slave trade or crossing the border in Mexico, we really do have two different feelings about and two different responses to border realities based on that simple fact. And I don't think that we're going to adopt appropriate resolutions and solutions to immigration politics till as a nation we deal with the phenomenon of white privilege. So just in terms of either offering solutions from a religious perspective or responding to those put on the table, those are the things that I think I would mention.